Here's Maxime Bernier tweeting, quote, "He is perfectly free to identify the way he wants, but for the rest of us who haven't been corrupted by politically correct nonsense, he's a man, not a woman, and a pervert, and a bully. Let's stop this madness now before it goes even further." And he's responding to the Jonathan Yaniv Brazilian waxing case that's being reported by CBC News. And Mr. Yaniv has been confronted in recent days. Mr. Yaniv identifies as a woman, as a transgender woman, I suppose. And there is a lot of press currently about this. And it's interesting to see Mr. Bernier weigh in on it. What's more interesting is no other leader has weighed in on it, to my knowledge. Not one. In a time of having Lindsay Shepherd banned off Twitter, having the declaration on electoral, what was it called again? I've got the newspaper article here. Declaration on Electoral Integrity, and forcing tech giants like Facebook and Microsoft, Google to sign on to this declaration, and it making news that Twitter dragged its feet on signing this. Do you think within that context, leaders would be weighing in on this, but they're not? Maxime Bernier is, but the rest of them aren't. Interesting, right? Interesting. What's the motivation for that? I just went to check just to make sure that Andrew Scheer and Justin Trudeau hadn't weighed in like this morning and I'd missed it, but they didn't. They haven't. And that's interesting. Here's the Financial Post. And I don't often talk about the NDP. I'll talk about them now because of this. But the reason I don't touch on them very much is because I think that they're so close to the Liberals and so far left that they will just dominate and fight the Liberals for the already base, like the base that they currently have, really. And I don't think there'll be a non-issue. I think the issue will be that people will look at the Liberals, realize they're very close to what the NDP are offering. Maybe they'll realize that the Liberals essentially are taking up the NDP's space and start looking for a centrist party. And then they'll come to Andrew Scheer and they'll realize that his policies are just the same as Justin Trudeau's as well. And, with little Overton window differences, there's slight differences, but Mr. Scheer's not being very firm on any of his policies, not at all. So, they're going to look for firm policies. That's what I would do. And I'm not saying I know everybody. I'm saying I would look and say, looks weak. And then I'd look at Trudeau and go, I don't like that. And then I'd look at Scheer and go, he's doing what Trudeau is doing. And then I'm left to look further afield, right? And I mean, to me, the obvious next place to look is the People's Party, but I am biased. Maybe the next place to look is the Greens for you, but I'll tell you, Elizabeth May has already pledged her balance of power seats to Justin Trudeau. So if you want to vote for the Greens and have even less say about what the Liberals do, well, I guess vote for the Greens, I suppose, if you want to. Seems weird. So that's how I think things are going to play out. Now, a friend of mine pointed out the other day, hey, what do you think is going to happen after the election? Do you think you're just going to get, even if you get in like a minority, do you think you're just going to get endlessly ground down with opposition and foot dragging and obstruction? And I said, oh man, I was looking only at, I hadn't played it out 6 months after the election. So, and I mean, I started a thread on Canada Poly just to talk about it because I thought, man, there's going to be lots of interesting things. We watched an interesting situation unfold in New Brunswick recently in the last election where there wasn't a majority. There was a minority government, and in a minority government, the current governing party gets to try and gain the confidence of the House. So they get to make a throne speech, right? This is what we'll do. And they get to promise the moon. They get to do, they get to say they'll do everything. We learned our lesson. We understand. And we know what Canadians want, right? That's what they always say. And that was tried by the sitting Liberals and failed. And the minority government propped up by a brand new party with 2 seats is currently functioning, right? But that took some time and some time, essentially, and people aren't patient when it comes to politics, especially when it comes to leadership changes. So this is an interesting time, and this is why I think the NDP doesn't play into it, because tone-deaf policies like this. Okay, Financial Post is reporting. That was a really long intro. Sorry about that. Financial Post is reporting the NDP's new tax the rich plan is terrible, even by their standards. This is an opinion piece, just so you're aware. The class warfare section of the federal NDP's plan, released 4 months before the federal election, is entitled, quote, "A New Deal for Tax Fairness." It's found on page 44 of the platform in a sea of economic absurdities and expensive promises. This is uninspiring. It's the NDP. Economic absurdities are their stock in trade. Under Jagmeet Singh's leadership, their inventory is overflowing. The corporate income tax hikes and sharp rise in capital gains. The taxes the platform proposes are standard fare for the NDP, as is a higher personal income tax rate for top earners, despite evidence from the C.D. Howe Institute and Fraser Institute that the Liberals' tax hike of this kind was so economically damaging that it actually caused government revenues to fall. The NDP's plan for a wealth tax, however, breaks a sort of glass ceiling on the worst tax proposal proposed in Canada. The proposal is for an annual 1% tax on wealth over $20 million. This means that if an Ontario resident to whom this tax applies invests $100,000 and a 1.5% GIC for 1 year, about the rate currently offered by big banks, he or she will earn $1,500 nominal return, on which will be owed $1,833 in tax. $833 in income tax, including a higher top margin income tax rate plus another $1,000 for the wealth tax. Wow. The effective tax rate on the GIC return is 122%, which is what the NDP now calls tax fairness. By contrast, the party's more sensible former leader, Thomas Mulcair, referred to marginal tax rates of over 50% as confiscation. The negative economic effects of the NDP's proposed I'm just going to keep going. Taxation are generally worsened by the fact that it would be an administrative nightmare. How does the government determine somebody's exact taxable wealth? The only assets with values that can be reliably determined are publicly traded financial assets, since they have observable market prices, but their prices fluctuate significantly. Somebody might have had $25 million worth of stock yesterday that is worth substantially less or more today. Meanwhile, the government has no good way of determining the prices of individual business investments, art collections, and many other assets. A wealth tax, says Hoover Institute scholar Richard Epstein, is a, quote, genuine suicide path, since the tax is levied against, among other assets, the human capital that forms a significant chunk of the value of businesses. But why should we want to tax human capital? And will private businesses be forced to annually calculate the taxable value of their human capital? That would increase the uncertainty involved in economic transactions, which would hurt everybody. There is, of course, a way to value and tax people's investments in businesses while avoiding the administrative nightmare of annual valuations and the uncertainty this inevitability brings. The value of a business is equal to present value of its expected future income. The way to know how much a business is worth, and therefore how much to tax, is to observe and then tax the business's income as it's earned. That is exactly what corporations or corporate and personal income taxes are for, which is why economists usually conclude the wealth tax is an inefficient and inordinately costly way to tax income. The whole idea seems as much a make-work project for lawyers and Canada Revenue Agency bureaucrats as it is a way to punish the financially successful Canadians. The NDP platform does not give any indication as to how they might manage the administrative complexity of a wealth tax. It merely states that they will, quote, ask the very richest of multimillionaires to pay a bit more. But of course, taxes are really about taking, and as opposed to asking. And while governments can charge higher tax rates, that doesn't, as the research shows, automatically translate into higher revenues, right? And it's interesting, right? Out of touch. They're proposing things that are maybe popular with their base, fighting for a liberal base, but they're not widening their audience. They're not broadening their appeal. In fact, since Mr. Layton left and Mr. Mulcair took the reins, he was very close to, keeping a lot of those seats from the 2011 high point of being the official opposition. And then since the NDP got rid of Mr. Mulcair and have Mr. Singh in there, man, I mean, their fortunes are fading. They don't have candidates. They're not fundraising well. It's interesting. Okay, here's a thread from Thoughtful Chrysalis. He's associated with the People's Party. He does a YouTube channel, and I found this interesting. He says, I verified this with 3 different people across Canada, all who have the same tweet censored. I will link the tweet thread below. This is an interesting thing to note, and I'm just going to show you, I had it all queued up, and now YouTube's reloading here, so that's kind of weird.
This is a message to PPC.
I will show you what's going on. Basically, Twitter is censoring PPC tweets or anything with PPC in it, I suppose. And it's gone through here. And as I said, I had it all queued up, but it's not now. So here we go.
15 to 15, and you go up. Where's 14 to 15? Where's 13? 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. And here's 6, and here's 5. But where's 4, 3? Here's 2. Where's 1? So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 out of 15 tweets were allowed through the Twitter filter. So Twitter doesn't want you, talking about PPC candidates, it seems. They're messing with it. Another interesting thing is if you click on...
So, and he goes to the main site, the person who's creating these tweets, and none of the tweets are deleted. So link is in the description. I recommend you go and watch the video. It's interesting. But more interesting, I ask again, like, how much power? How much power does a private company get to filter and censor people? All I'm asking for is everybody gets equal play. If I get 5 likes and you get 5 likes, then it shows that I get 5 likes and you get 5 likes. If I get 8 likes and you get 4 likes, then it shows that I get 8 likes and you get 4 likes. If 100 people share my thing, then those 100 people get to share the same way your 100 people get to share your thing. That's fairness, right? That's what I'm envisioning with this. But this is clearly not fair. This is clearly a bias working against certain people. And I haven't checked to see if they're doing it against Liberal candidates or Conservative candidates or NDP candidates or Green candidates. But I don't know. Maybe check it out if you've got some time. I don't know if those parties have as dedicated a base, people to sit around and make Twitter threads like this. Do they? Point me in their direction. Please, I'm interested, because people keep telling me, oh, there's lots and lots of energy out there for Liberals. There's lots of new members. There's lots of energy out there for Conservatives. Actually, I don't hear that so much in Ontario, but there's lots of energy out there for NDP, lots of energy out there for Greens, right? And I don't see it online. I don't see it online. And maybe that's who I'm following or whatever. Maybe that's true. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm willing to be wrong. Show me where these people are dedicated to the party, dedicated to the election. I mean, I can see the Greens being dedicated to their cause, but again, if Miss May is dedicating her balance of power seats to Justin Trudeau, are you okay with an ineffective carbon tax? Are you okay with what Justin Trudeau has done? I'm not. Certainly not. And I don't think Miss May should be either. So it's interesting that she's already pledged her balance of power to Justin Trudeau, right? Okay, that's the end of the first video. Thank you for watching. Check out thepeoplespartyofcanada.ca and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Second video to come.